First, I don't like the presentation sweet and sour. Because either we are in a difficult situation and we don't need sour, okay? We need just help or sweeties, if you like. So I don't see exactly what is the necessity to give to the sick man some sour medicine. Maybe you want him to die. I don't know. And I don't understand, once again, the way she's still looking at our industry. I was a little surprised by her remark regarding dividends. Because honestly, well, we can accept, of course, criticisms, and we accept them every day. But I think that we have had a pay-out policy in Europe, which is not very much different from the rest of the industry. And if we did so, it's just because we have no growth. And in fact, the main problem of our industry in Europe is that we have no growth, because we are not in a position to get some growth, some additional revenue out of our investment. This is the main problem. So let's maybe stop talking about this package, sweet and sour package, which is, to be once again very honest, largely irrelevant to my opinion, because once again I do think that I am afraid that the sour part is going to be even more sour or even more bitter after the passage in the European Parliament, and I am afraid that the sweet part is going to disappear. So it is a risky bet. It is a risky bet, and once again, given the description that we have of the industry as it is in Europe, and the desperate need for investment, I am just wondering if the top priority of Europe is to cut roaming prices and international calls. I am not saying that it is popular, that it is good, but I am still surprised by people that are thinking that we are going to increase our investment by cutting our resources. It's something that, well, I clearly understand with some problems. Now, I think that there is something that has been said very briefly by my predecessor, which is very important to understand why, in fact, Europe is in this situation, and what we have to think about in the future. And this fact is prices. Because there is a reality that everyone should bear in mind, is that prices for telecom services are in Europe the lowest in the developed world. They are the lowest in the developed world. This was clearly shown by the first slide, that was a very global figure on ARPU. But if you take some specific market situation, you will see that a mobile classic, say, bundle is more or less twice cheaper in Europe than, for instance, in the US, my dear friend Randall. And of course, we have to pay for this, because all the value that has been given, the productivity gain that has been delivered to the consumer because of competition and regulation, is a resource that we don't have to invest. And to be honest, if I had an average level of prices in the 9 countries where we operate in Europe, only 15% more, I will have a lot more money to invest, and even maybe a little more money to give to my shareholders. But anyway, so the reality is that the policy that has been led in Europe for the past 20 years aimed at almost a single target, which was to get the short-term lowest prices for the consumer. And honestly, when we look at this package, I don't see anything substantial regarding investment, because investment is linked to resources. Who is going to invest? We need 170 billion euros to make the digital Europe. Who is going to invest? The 200 operators in Europe? Certainly not. A few of them. And those few, there are, I think, all of them in this room today. What do they see when they look to Brussels? They see steps, measures, projects, cutting their resources. So Europe has to accept the idea that the prices for our services, for new technologies, for mobile broadband, for fiber, will have maybe to increase a little bit from the level where they are today. If not, to be honest, I don't see how we could manage this, because there is no more money in Europe. The states have no money. The European Commission has very little money. One year ago, we talked about 10 billion of subsidies for digital agenda. Now it's 900 million euros, and we are not totally sure that we will get them. So there is no public money, and the operators, they need to have business models and to have revenues out of their investment. That is very simple. So we need to recover some pricing power and to stop with a policy that has been led not only by Brussels, but by each of the countries, by multiplying the number of operators and by introducing in the very recent years some new players, with a single aim, which was to destroy value and to cut prices, which was a very successful policy, by the way, because, as a matter of fact, the result is that we have today the lowest prices in the developed world. So, yes, we need a shift. Once again, prices and, of course, investment and innovation. I am 100% agree with what has been said regarding investment and innovation, especially by my minister, Fleur Pellerin, because, yes, I think she's right to emphasize what we should do in Europe regarding venture capital, regarding innovation in the internet world, and ourselves, operators, we would be very glad to participate in this. But once again, we need margins and resources in our core business.
And Tim, you've got a toe in the US, so you've got a slightly different perspective, and also, I mean, the orange perspective is very much coloured by free, and coming in Germany, it's the opposite. You're going from not only free, but
Spain is the same.
Spain is the same.
In Poland, it's the same. You have a lot of European countries that know more or less the same situation.
In Germany, it might happen the opposite, though. We might go from 4 to 3 for the first time. So, Tim, what would you do if you were in a position where you could guide policy at a very top level? And the healthy concentration slide drew the eye, actually, which...
Look, the first thing is I think you get what you have asked for. And managers in our system, we tend to live with this ambiguity and interdependencies. So we manage around that. We're trying to optimize the system we are in. We are cutting out costs wherever we can. We're trying to optimize the CapEx allocation, keeping the CapEx to sales ratio in a shrinking business at the same level, which is less every year. We're trying to gain new business models, but we do not have sufficient money to spend it all into the software business, because there is so much need into the infrastructure business that we are trying to focus on areas. We are even selling businesses where we do not have a right to win on a long-term perspective, and trying to gain yield in these respective markets. So I do not want to go into this mall anymore, because I think we have heard enough of it, but this industry is in a big problem from its positioning to the US. Now, comparing ourselves with the US, comparing ourselves with Asia, what is the difference in the system? And maybe I use the example of the Valley, even if it's not fitting 100%. The university is attracting skills, the incubators are feeding ideas, the VC capital is coming all over the place and growing the businesses, and the legislative system is supporting, let's say, the environment when it comes to intellectual property, or when it comes to the possibility to move from one job to another. The ecosystem is working. Our ecosystem is not working anymore. And by the way, it doesn't make sense to blame the regulator. The regulator is even living in ambiguity and in its interdependencies, because he has a kind of telecommunication law he has to manage. So our system is not working. It's not interactive anymore. To give you an example, we decide we have to scale in our industry. If we want to scale in our industry, we should be able to consolidate. If you go to the local regulators, they say, I want to have 4 or 5 operators in my respective mobile markets. So how is that fitting? And even if somebody is disappearing in the market, the next spectrum auction is going to be about a 3rd or 4th player coming back into the market. No synergies could be realized, which could be then invested into the future infrastructure. Second example, the old patterns, the old theories about regulatory didn't work. There is this letter of investment. The idea of wholesale access never worked out. We gave our access to companies using our infrastructure, but they never used the money for building own infrastructure. They just optimized their return on capital employed. They have 19% on an average, while we as telcos, we do not earn our money. We do not earn our capital costs in the respective markets. So what does that mean if we're not earning our capital cost? We cannot invest anymore. And by the way, it is totally wrong if the commissioner says our dividends are too high. Deutsche Telekom has 60 generated operating free cash flow of 47 billion, of which 67% got invested into infrastructure, and the rest, half of it, got into the debt reduction of our companies. Because we even have to keep our leverage. Our companies are even highly leveraged. So therefore, the minor portion which went into the dividend is not solving the investment structure. So what do we need? I think the first thing we need an entirely new attempt towards regulation. Because nobody understands anymore what we are talking about. And if nobody understands it, why should politicians care about us? If we talk about level 2, level 3, level 4 regulation, if we talk about bitstream access, if we talk about number portabilities, if we talk about all these kind of things, people lay back and say, what the hell are these guys talking about? That this has a fundamental impact to them. That is not what they really realize at that point in time. So we need a kind of political attempt to say a full deregulation in markets where we have competing infrastructure. I'm not talking about the rural areas where only one infrastructure is existing. But we need an attempt of saying this market doesn't need regulation anymore. The second thing is, what is the definition of market? It is not anymore the copper infrastructure. We have LTE as a substitute, we have cable operators as a substitute, and we have the internet paradigm, which is even part of our value chain. We have to do a new market definition, which is then including all this. And on this market, as we heard it, the so-called level playing field. By the way, if politicians would here make a level playing field, they will not understand that. We should say what we mean with that. It cannot be that there is a limitation for us switching providers with clear rules. Have you ever tried to switch from Apple's iTunes into another ecosystem? Think about if you're switching from your operator to another operator's. Fully regulated. This is asymmetric. And therefore it's not fair. We cannot compete in our environment anymore. So this would be my second thought about it. And the third one is we have to gain scale. Because comparing ourselves, I see Rendell there with his 150 billion market capitalization. Stéphane has 20. I have 45 billion. You know, if we all combine the European players, we may be at eye level with Rendell. But this shows the relevance of this system. Europe is in its scale too small to be relevant on the global supplier side on the long term, and even with the over-the-top players on the long term. And therefore, we have to gain scale. We need a kind of new legislation for the competitive antitrust rules here in Europe.
Let's talk to a man who's got scale. We've got Mike, Liberty Global, on a great run. Arguably has been a beneficiary of a decade of slightly negative regulations towards the telecom sector, and the cable going through a considerable boom at the moment. Take us through your view. Long may it continue, I guess, from your point of view.
I'm always surprised when I'm invited back to this conference. It's interesting. But for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have benefited to some extent, but I would say the vast majority of our success has come from the fact that we have not been regulated. And we didn't start the fire that created the 300-degree flame that Luigi discussed, but we fan it all the time. And not to be mean or difficult. We have, 90% of our 45 million households in Europe can get 100 megabits today. Most of them 250, soon a gig, and we're going to be there. So that creates a bit of an irritant in the system. And we've achieved that not because we saw weak competitors, but we saw market opportunity. It was interesting, the BEREC regulator said earlier that we're here to do something. I would argue you don't have to do anything. The fact of the matter is this market can evolve and be successful without any regulation. I agree with you 100%, but I'm going to come back to many of your comments because I agree with scale and consolidation, none of which we've been able to achieve in Germany, but that's a separate conversation. But it's true. The three things that this legislation does try to do, the three top things that were discussed, I agree with all of them. We often describe ourselves as sort of in a David and Goliath battle with telcos and incumbents. And that's kind of the way it's been. We're very small. We might have comparable market caps. My revenue's 70% less than yours. But we're still very small on the ground. And I'm okay with that fight. What I don't want is for Goliath to fall on me, if you know what I mean. We need healthy telco competitors. We want a healthy telco competitive environment. We are not supportive of policies that put these two guys in challenging market positions. That doesn't help us at all. Look at Holland. At one point, there were 10 unbundled resellers in Holland. Prices dropped. Now there's one, and a telco in disarray. And that's value destruction for all of us. So I'm supportive of deregulating wholesale access. I don't think you need it. I'm supportive of maximizing consolidation. We need to do it. There's 7,000 cable operators in Europe. That's a much bigger problem than the mobile guys see. And I'm supportive of leveling the playing field with OTT. As soon as Netflix came into Ireland, boom, our numbers changed. We're investing in Holland today just to support the amount of consumption that's being driven on our networks. We've seen an 8 to 10-fold increase in consumption in 7 years. And that's going nowhere but up, right? As devices multiply in the home, as people put their mobiles on Wi-Fi. And that pipe that we all provide into that household is being congested, and it will only get more congested over time if we can't manage that traffic and find another relationship with OTT providers. So quite frankly, I'm not in the mobile business. I've got 4 million subs and a relatively small amount of revenue. But with respect to those first 3 points, I'm supportive of those. I don't have a huge dog in this hunt, as they say. But in principle, I'm supportive of a healthy telco environment.
Fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up there because we're grossly over time. But it's been fantastic to hear from everyone here, and I think we've got some very clear views. So can please everyone give a hand of applause to everyone here.